Okay. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first class. You can call me Victor Peter. Anyone, right? Any of them. Um, and I'm going to be your trainer, your Node.js beginner trainer. Right. Already you guys have started asking questions. Someone just asked if this video will be on YouTube. Yes, definitely. It will be on YouTube, so you can watch later if you want to watch again. Right? Okay. So, uh, we are going to look at introduction to backend development with Node.js. But before we go into Node.js, we should first talk about programming and um the whole concept behind it, right? We should start from there before we now like go into the back end, talking about what JS and all the stuff. Okay, we needed a way to communicate with them, right? And there are different levels of language, right, that you can use to communicate with a computer. You can use assembly language if you know how to write zeros and ones in a way that's computer. You can also do that. I can't do that. But then we also have the modern way of, or the simpler way of communicating with a computer, which is by using a programming language, right? So, and of course, we know a couple of programming languages. We have JavaScript, we have C Sharp, uh, we have PHP, Python, C, Swift, right? We have all those as programming languages. And this language helps humans to communicate easily with machines, right? So at the same way in real life, you should be able to communicate with someone fluently in the language two of you understand. That's the same way machines work. You need to talk to them in a language that they could understand. But machines don't understand high level languages, right? So they have to be a um should I say a bridge behind, or a bridge between your machine and you. So, and that bridge would aid in converting what you want the machine, or converting your commands from what you understand to what the machine would understand, right? And then that's bridge, right, in between you and your machine is called a compiler or an interpreter, right? So a compiler or an interpreter, anyone would do the conversion of your human readable code to machine readable code. That's from what you write as English to the zeros and ones that your computer will now understand. Of course, you know that your computer understands just zeros and ones, right? No other thing, just zeros, ones, right? So then, what's the difference between a compiler and an interpreter, right? So, compilers are used um to convert in bulk machine human readable code to machine code, right? If you've written something like uh C, for example, C programming language, you find out that you have to first compile your code, and then you have an executable file, which once you execute that file, you'd be able to, or your program would be able to run or execute. Then you also have interpreters, right? So interpreter um gets your line of code, it runs it line by line. It runs your code line by line, like it executes it as it's getting the line. Reads one line, interprets that line, executes it, read the other line, interpret it, execute it, like that. Okay. Then, of course, that's the basic for compiler. We shouldn't really go into that for now. Then another thing I would want to talk about is JavaScript. So JavaScript is a simple language, is a dynamic language, and it's is dynamically typed, or some people say it's loosely typed. So what does that mean, right? For people that have written other programming languages, right? You find out that if you want to declare a data type, oh, I'm actually going. I hope you guys follow. I know that there are some beginners here, people that might not really relate with what I'm trying to say, but it will make sense in a couple of classes, right? So the same way you have, like, maybe you treat the way you treat numbers, if someone asks you 2 plus 2, you know that, oh, that's 4, and you know that that's mathematics, you're trying to add two numbers. But if someone tells you um a plus b, you you tell the person, okay, the answer will be ab, right? So here a times a would be a squared and all the stuff like that. So computer also has data types, a type of data that it can work with. So the data types could be like string. So string is just like set of characters in quotes, whether double quotes, single quotes, right? You have numbers. Numbers is like the normal numbers, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1 million. And there are different types. These um numbers that have decimal, numbers that don't have decimal, long numbers, and the rest. Okay. Then you have arrays, objects. Objects. Arrays are also a kind of object, sha. But then we are going to go into all those things. So, um, you use these data types to communicate, to tell your PC what to do, how to do a certain thing, and all those stuff. I hope you guys are following. Is there anybody that is not following, is not getting what I'm trying to say? Is there anybody that is confused, or anybody already has a question? Okay, so in the absence of questions, I'll continue. Right. So I was just talking about JavaScript. So when you say a is equals to 5, for example, JavaScript will just automatically understand that, oh, since that 5 is not in quotes, then that should be a number, right? If you say a is equals to hello in quotes, JavaScript automatically understands that um this is a string, right? Okay, so someone just asked, yeah, I'm displaying what I'm sharing, or the screen I'm sharing is just introduction to backend with backend development with Node.js. That's the screen I'm actually sharing, right? So when you say a language is statically typed or strongly typed, you're saying that everything that you're going to write on that language, everything you're going to put out on that language, like variables, functions, the return of a function and all those stuff, they are going to have specific types. Like, okay, if you're assigning a variable, you say a is equals to 5. That a um the you need to tell that programming language, right? Or you need to specify what particular data type or sorry, the data type that you're trying to assign that variable to. But in JavaScript, it's not like that. In JavaScript, you just declare your variable. You don't have to give it a type. JavaScript will automatically infer the type, right? So that's like just basic, very, very basic explanation of like that's just like an overview, right? I just gave in terms of programming and then programming languages and also JavaScript as a programming language. Okay, so is there any question? So I want to actually move to the next slide. So we're going to the lineups we have today. Okay, so introduction to software development, right? So software, right? Let's start from there. So we've heard of software, hardware, right? So and we know that hardware in a layman's term is the part of a computer where that you can see, that you can touch, that is tangible, like you can touch, you can feel, right? Then software, you see its action, but you can't touch a software. I don't know if anybody has touched software here before, but you build it, right? And software is executed on your PC. You don't actually touch software, right? So software is what runs on your PC or what runs in your PC, right? So, and example of softwares, we have like Mavis Bacon, we have VS Code, virtually all the games you people have been playing on your PC, all those stuffs, they are softwares, basically. Right. So let's move on. Um, what's backend development? Before we even come to backend development, let's see the people that we're actually going to work with. Let me talk about how um the flow of software development mainly. First, right? You have an idea, and let's take for example an e-commerce app. You're thinking of building an e-commerce app. So you first think about the idea. Okay, what will I sell there? How would the interface be and everything and everything and everything? You think about the idea, you know what you're going to sell, how you're going to sell it, the prices and everything. Then you usually hire a UI designer. So UI UX people, just know that some from your capstone project also, you work with UI UX people. You will look at their design and then try to um, implement um, APIs that would give information to the front end that match the design you're looking at. Just to know. So you first, as let's take for example, you're the project owner, right? You hire a UI UX person. You tell the person, oh, this is the idea I have. I want to build this e-commerce store. It should look very nice. These are like my colors, and everything. And then the person draws the interfaces for mobile, for PC. Sometimes they only do for PC. Some go as far as doing for PC and for mobile, right? They draw those screens, and after that, you look. They present the drawings. They present the designs to you, and then you make corrections. So after making corrections, the next thing is to bring in the developers, right? So that's when they go source for back-end developer, front-end developer. If you also want a software tester to also test what both parties are doing, then development begins. So the front-end developer would be looking at the design and also coding the front end part of it, right? So the front end part of it, what you see like the login screen, the screen for the e-commerce where the products are going to show, the checkout and all the ends, and then um providing endpoints, right? Providing the API that they are going to use for the front end. So now the front end guys, after doing that, they wait for the backend developer. So what does the backend developer do? His own job is to write the logic to process data that comes in and then send back a response, basically. So for example, on that login screen, maybe for your e-commerce store, when you put in username, put in password, let's say, or you use email and password, a user comes in, puts in his email and his password, and he clicks login. That email and password, first, there will be like a form validation on front end to check, is this a valid email in the first place? Okay, if it's valid, okay. Does the password, maybe some actually do it, they still check for the validity of the password. Like, is the password 8 characters long? Does it contain um numbers? Does it contain special characters and all the stuff? Then after that, they send the email and the password to the back end via an endpoint. So an endpoint is like where you can send your, it's how do I put it? It's like a link, right? Where you can send um requests to and then get a response back. So they send the email and password to the backend. The backend now receives that data, and then the backend now starts doing its check. First, it will pick the email. It will now go to the database. The backend will now query the database, find out is there any record with this email and or with this email on this particular table, let's say on the user's table, any record that has this email. Okay, yes, there's a record. The database will now return that record to the back end. The back end will now check, okay, there's a record, which means this user exists. If that user doesn't exist, the backend would tell the front end, maybe something like 404, then maybe a message saying user does not exist. Then it's left for the front end now to use that error response to show maybe like a modal or something to tell the user that this email you're trying to use does not exist, or something to at least tell the user that we don't know you, right? The backend has does that. The next thing the backend will do is, okay, let's check. Is the password you supplied the same as the password on the back end? Or like, do they match? Not really that they are the same. Do they match? Because when you're storing password on back end or even sensitive data like password, for example, it needs to be hashed. You don't just like you don't just store the password like this the same way it's being sent to you when you try to register a user, right? It's a standard. So even you as the owner of the e-commerce platform, you should not know the passwords to your user's account. It's wrong. It needs to be hashed before it's stored on the back end, right? So now let's go back to the backend developer. The backend developer checks if the passwords match. If the passwords don't match, right? That's the hashed password, and there's a way to compare plain password with hash password to see if they match. There's a library for that. So if those two don't match, you still send a message again to the front end telling them, you provided invalid or incorrect credentials. Then the front enders will look for a way to show that message too. Then Of course, if the username is correct, sorry, if the email is valid, the password matches with the email, the next thing is to log that user in, right? So logging that user in uh would be to provide that user with a token that user is going to be sending to the back end each time the user is making a call to a protected route. So a protected route it's just simply a route that is not open to that is open to only people that are logged in. You understand? You realize that on the front end, there are some things you can't, most times you can't even access the dashboard of a particular platform except you're logged in, right? You can't even access the dashboard. But let's say even if you were able to access the dashboard, right, and then you did not have the front end, did not have an access token, right? You won't be able to make requests and then get response from the back. The backend would not treat your requests properly, right? Most times. Okay, so the back ender is responsible for writing that structure, putting putting in place those structures, like what is going the code that's going to um process, for example, that logging in. Maybe if you forgot password, is the back end that would send email, right? The backend is going to send email, and then the backend is going to like tell the user, "Oh, okay, the front end that your password has been, um, or your an email has been sent to you, check it and then provide OTP. The back end is also going to be the one to generate the OTP. For example, if you're doing forget email, reset email kind of thing, right? That's like the back end's responsibility, right? Then the front end just logs to the back end to send it the appropriate payload and then get back what is it's supposed to get. Okay, so I hope is there any question on what I've explained so far? Any question? If there's any question, you just drop it on the chat. Also looking there in case there's any question. Right, so let's continue. So that's basically it, right? And then of course, the reason we are here, you would see how to um develop backend technologies, how to host them and everything. All these things will come up in subsequent classes. Of course, what's the responsibility of a backend developer? Simple. The backend developer is responsible for um, the infrastructure behind the backend. That's the code, the features, everything that has to do with keeping the API, right, or keeping the backend running, right? And also the features working properly. That's what the backend developer is responsible for, right? And you guys are going to be backend developers very soon. So just know that responsibility fall on your shoulder. Okay, so then technologies involved in backend development, documentation, and testing. Okay, so for development, um, okay, so Matilda just asked, when you say features, what do you mean? Right. So features are just like basic um I don't know how to actually put it, but there are basic things that the back end should be able to do. A particular feature has its own route or its own endpoint. So features, okay, for example, login is a feature on its own. Sign up would be another feature on its own. Forget password is a feature on its own. Reset password is a feature on its own. Adding products is another feature on its own. We call it features. So what's the feature of your backend, right? It's more like asking someone what's the spec of your phone. Oh, okay. what's the specification? It has so and so number of RAM, so and so number of ROM, or sorry, so number of memory, which is the RAM, yeah, so number of storage, which is like the internal. Then this the memory card that comes with it. If I'm giving you like those are like kind of the features of the phone or the specification. So when you're building your back end, so you would also want to like build it and have each feature as like, should I say, being modular. This endpoint is for this particular feature. For example, you're doing sign up and you're doing login, right? You can't, it will be difficult to to do the two as one feature, although it's possible. It's possible. You can actually do it as one feature, but it's most times advisable to like separate them, right? Except you're doing something like um Google signing, where if the email doesn't exist, you just automatically add it to the back end and then log the person in. If the email already exists, still log the person in. uh But if you're doing something like, for example, a banking, how many of you have seen a banking app you say login with Google? I mean, I've not seen before. So, for example, a banking app, you make sure that the register feature is on a different endpoint. The login feature is like on a different endpoint. Right. Is there any other question? Any other question? Right. Then when the backend developer, of course, let me come back to that illustration I was giving about the e-commerce. When the backend developer has finished developing this thing and everything, the tester, if there is a tester, the tester can test. The backend developer can also test his API. He can write automated tests. He can do it manually, right? By testing each endpoint to see that it's giving the appropriate information. Then he can host it, right? He can deploy the back end. So now deploying it, there are different platforms you can deploy your back end on. You can deploy on AWS, you can deploy on a VPS, a virtual private service, right? Or a virtual private server. You can deploy there. You can deploy on render.com. You can deploy on fly.io. There are different places you can deploy your back end to. So deploying is just setting up your server on a remote PC so that anybody in the world can actually query your back end, right? And then use it. You'll be able to use it. So once you deploy it and configure it, you can have like a link to the back end, which you can share to the front end developers to use when they also want to deploy their front end on a platform, any platform that can hold front end code also. So that's how it basically works. And also, it's possible to deploy your backend and then you just only use an IP address to fetch information or to query the backend, right? It's on a VPS. Of course, every VPS would give you an IP address, right? Every VPS would give you an IP address. So you just deploy it on that IP address and then you deploy it on that VPS, share the IP address, and then do your necessary configuration, and everything would work well. Right. So, for VPS, I'm not sure we are going to actually touch that. I think we'll leave that to the advanced or intermediate guys. They can do VPS, Docker, all the stuff like that. We're not going to really go into it. So, uh, I think I should talk a little bit about Docker. Should I? Or is it already too difficult? I hope everybody's following. Is there anybody that is not following? Okay. All right. So what why let's hmm okay. Okay. You want to have an idea about Docker. That's nice. All right. So why did we have something like containerization in the first place? Docker. and everything. So there's there's this there's this thing that has to happen when, let's say, three or more developers are working on a particular project. Let's say I started working on a particular project, and then maybe like another developer is added to the same project, and I've gone far with the project. Let's take, for example, I'm using Python. Okay, let me know it's Python. Let me still use JavaScript. Maybe I'm using um um version, let's say Node.js version 22.0.1 or 22.0.1, for example. This other person is using maybe 24.1.1. That's his own version of Node.js, right? There are things, sort of, most some PC also. So because you're trying to deploy to a platform in Node.js, and then your version is not up to that, and then sometimes, hello, I hope you guys can hear me clearly. Can you guys still hear me clearly? Okay. All right. So now the difference in that in environment, right, usually cause issue. The difference in environment. There's this joke people used to say, um, maybe someone asks you, why is it that this your backend is not working on the server that's it's deployed to? You'd be like, I don't know, but it's working on my PC. And they'll look at you and be like, is it your PC we are going to give the customers to be using to access this, to access our service? Like, you get. So what does Docker come to do? Docker comes to make it possible for you to um have that whole your whole setup in an isolated environment called a container, right? So that container can run every now. With that container, you can ship that container and use it to deploy your back end, and it's going to run exactly the same way it ran on your PC, with the whole configuration, the same version of Node.js, the same version of everything, npm. As you've containerized it maybe locally and you push that container, any other developer that is using Docker can pull that container and spin it up and run it again. That developer doesn't even need to install anything or do anything, right? He just like pulls the same container that you've pushed, and then everything that has to do with making that container run would come with that container, and then the person can use it that way. So there's no excuse of my PC, or my I'm using a Windows PC or using a Linux PC, or I'm using a Windows PC or using a Mac, and then because of the difference in environment, um code runs on my own end, but it doesn't run on your own end. Just go and pull the container and run it. It's going to actually work. So that's the main use of Docker, right? And then with Docker, you can spin multiple instances of your back end. For example, you maybe you find out that maybe like 5,000 people will hit your server maybe because you're trying to do a particular sales. Maybe let's take, for example, an e-commerce app. You're trying to do a particular sales. You know that your server, if you have done stress tests on it, your server cannot accommodate 5,000 people at a time. That's being able to receive and receive request and then send response back to 5,000 people at the same time. You can decide to implement load balancing, but then before implementing load balancing, you can spin up multiple instances of your Docker, right? Of your Docker container. You say, okay, this Docker container, you want to have like 3 instances of it. You write the file the Docker compose file for it, and then you run the compose the command Docker compose something. So I can't remember it. You run it in detach mode if you don't want it to show to the user or show or run in front of you. You want it to run at the background. You can run it on detach mode, and then definitely those the number of instances you want Docker to spin up on, they would come up, and then you do your configuration with maybe something like to Nginx to manage the load balancing. So if you can say, okay, the first server, 2,000 people should go, second server, 2,000 people should go, the third server, 1,000 or something like that, where it will be able to manage the load so that the load is distributed amongst the server that you've spinned up, right? So that's another advantage, right, of using something like Docker. You can manually spin up um, 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 multiple instances. I think that's what is called horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling, there's vertical scaling. So an instance is um, R. An instance is just simply an instance. I don't know what to call it, but don't mind me. When you say an instance, you're saying um a particular creation of that your back end. So if you have 3 instances, you're running the back end, but like you're running it times 3, like a copy, like right. So you have if you're running one instance, just know it's just like, in fact, when you're running your back end normally, when you're running your backend normally on your PC, actually you're running one instance of that backend. But if you want to run 3 instances, you need to copy your project like 3 times, then run them on different ports. Like you copy your projects, maybe you name it e-commerce backend 1, e-commerce backend 2, e-commerce backend 3. Open the 3 of them with VS Code. Then you now go and do npm start, npm start, npm start. But of course, the 3 of them will run on 3 different ports, right? But maybe port 3000, port 3001, port 3002, right? Those are like 3 instances you've created, but that's not a good way of creating instances, because so if you want to update, maybe you want to add a feature to your back end, you now have to go open your first instance, write it, copy it, go to your second instance, paste, copy it again, go to your third instance, paste. No, that's that's not how it's supposed to be. But or with Docker now, you can have just one code base, and then you run multiple instances of that code base. So there's a command, there's a file called Docker Compose. You do your you write your you specify how you want it to be, the number of the number of containers you want to spin up and everything. And then once you finish that, you execute a particular command. Once you execute that command, it will just create from that your one image or one uh code base. It will create like 3 instances of it. So that's another like what's it called? Advantage of creating some. So you can have like development environments, production environments, staging environments, maybe like three instances of production environments, one instance of staging environments, one instance of, like, you get my point. That's one advantage of like using something like Docker. Right. I've actually strayed away. This is a beginner class too. So let's come back. Let's come back. Is there any other question? Any other question? No, we are not going to containerization. I was just saying it so that you know that there's something like that. We'll leave containerization to the intermediate class. Don't worry, when you want to do containerization, go to intermediate straight up. They'll show you how to do it and everything. But there are people here that are actually um, beginners, right? So we can't actually even say we want to go to containerization. Cool. So let's see what technologies involved in backend development. Of course, your programming language, which is JavaScript we are going to use here. Um, you can use Express. So framework, you can use Express. There's Nest.js, Nest, Nest, Nest.js. There's Happy.js. Um, is it Andony.js, right? What other backend? I can't remember, but I think those are like the very popular ones, right? You can use to write your back end, or you can decide to write your back end without using any of those, which is going to be a lot more painful, right? So in this class or in this training, we are going to use Express.js to write our back end. Then when you talk about documentation and testing, um so documentation and testing kind of goes hand in hand. You can write your documentation using a README file. You can write your documentation using is it GitHub Wiki? I haven't used that before, but you can use GitHub Wiki to do that. You can use Postman for documentation and testing, right? Postman is very, very popular. It's what I love to use. I use Postman a lot, right? So what's Postman, for example? How does it work? Why do we need it? And how will it help us? So let's talk about Postman a bit. Now, as a backend developer, right? Your front enders don't know how. You will not call your front end and be like, the endpoints for login is localhost, or is 192.168. This / v1 / authentication /login. Then you send content type of application slash JSON. Body Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. You can mute. Sorry, that was a sorry about that. Let's continue. Okay, so I was talking about Postman, right? I was saying that with Postman, you can easily communicate what you're building, right? The API you're building to your front-end developers and your testers. So when you write an endpoint, let's say for example you write an endpoint for login, you say, oh, login would take username and password or email and password, for example. After doing that, you go to Postman, you document it. So you go to where you have the place for URL, you put the URL there, you the place for the type of request, if it is a get, post, put, or delete request, you set it there on Postman. The place to provide the details, user, email, then password, you'd place them there and everything, right? Okay, someone is saying I should retake the last part. Okay, I think the last part I talked about documentation with Postman, right? So, documenting with Postman. I hope you guys can still hear me. Oh. So when you're documenting with Postman, you're just basically um putting in what you've done already, like the interface you've designed for your back end. You're putting that interface and the properties that interface need, you update them on Postman so that your front-end developer or the software tester can use Postman to test before implementing. Sorry, okay. Um, let's continue. So that's it for documentation and testing. Salary range. Of course, everybody wants money. Now, this salary range is not how do I put it? These salary ranges, right, is like for the average. Now, it doesn't mean if someone tells you to develop something for him that's less than that price, then the person wants to cheat you, right? Probably true, the person might not have money. But then salary ranges for backend developers in Nigeria can range from depending on your uh depending on your experience and the number of projects you've built, you can start from 150K upwards to like 3 million, 2 million, depending on your years of experience and also the person or the company you're working with or you want. Right. That's for Nigeria. Then outside the country, it's usually from $1,000. In fact, from $800, basically. $800 upwards. There are some backend developers that are paid $5,000, $7,000, $9,000, and the rest, depending on the company you're working with and your level of experience too. So, saying you're a junior backend developer, but you're working for a big company, it's possible you might even be earning more than what a senior developer, right, would be doing in another company. It's actually possible, right? Okay, of course, you when so it's negotiable. Of course, depending on the company you're applying to work with, it's negotiable. Of course, when you're and this is a secret, don't tell anybody. When a company asks you How much should we pay you? Right? It's a secret though. Don't tell anybody. Always give a price range. Don't tell them a specific amount. They say, how much should we pay you? Be like, I want you people to be paying me 400K. No. Actually, it might be in their mind that they wanted to pay you 600. But it's you that, eh, right? It's you that said 400. So they will not tell you, we wanted to pay you 600, but you say 400. No. Make it a range. Uh, I can accept 400 to 700,000, right? And then hear what they are going to say. From there, you can then negotiate. That brings that brings in room for negotiation, right? Even if they are, even if they want to take it, maybe let's say, oh, okay, that 400 is pound, but I can't accept that. Can you pay me 600? Can you pay me 550 or 500? Right? It's money talk now, and I'm something is telling me that everybody's ear is open. Well, yeah, that's true, right? They actually most times want to go for that minimum amount range. So now the trick is make sure that you're comfortable with that minimum amount that you're calling. So that in case it's doesn't go well, that they still insist on that minimum amount. You just know that okay, even if that amount is still good for you, right? Don't go and tell them 50,000 to 500. They expect them to go and pay you like 400. It will not work. They'll bring it, if they want to try, they'll say, okay, let it be 150 or 200 if they really like you. So negotiating your salary too is another topic. Actually, it's another topic. Okay, so I've passed the salary part. Is there anybody that wants to ask any question? Any question? All right, so since there's no question on that part, let's continue. Okay, so we've done all these things, we've done all these things, we've said a lot of things, and okay, yeah, exactly, right? Let's learn and expertise. Martins said, let's learn and expertise first. This salary part should be later. Right. That's why you guys are here now. I'm not saying the salary part so that you people will leave the class now and go and apply for work now and start bargaining salary now. I'm telling you so that you know. Right. And most times your first gig might not actually pay you close to the price range. I'm not saying it will always be like that too. I'm not saying it will always be like that, but considering the person that's actually taking you, right? The first person that's going to employ you might actually do it um because he believes that you will be able to deliver on the job. Because first, you don't have any portfolio, you don't have any work you've done before based on back end that you can show the person to build the person's belief that you can deliver. So if someone still chooses you to work for him and then the person doesn't pay you up to that range, still do it, right? Still build what deliver on the job. Use that salary, or sorry, use that job as what you put on your CV to advertise to other people that yes, you were the one that built this. From the other people can believe that okay, since you built this, you can also build their own platform. Right. So let's go into introduction stroke environment setup for Node.js. Right. Now, now, before uh, um the last 2 years or 3 saying I'm legit, but we all know that tech pays. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Right. There's this thing. So there's this Um, hmm, there is thing one of my friends usually says. He says that tech money is blood money, but you're going to pay with your own blood, right? It's blood money, but you're going to pay with your own blood, sweats, tears. There are days when you might sit down and be like, is this tech really for me? Because you've been trying to implement one thing and it's not working, and you've tried, and it's still not giving you what you want. I'm just telling you, those days will come. But when those days come, just know that I told you already. Right. Okay. So I wanted to dive into introduction and setup of Node.js environment. So before now, we know that Node.js JavaScript only run on the browser, right? So you can execute your JavaScript on the browser. You won't even sleep again. So it's really a personal blood money. All right. Yeah, that's true. So um before now, or before Node.js came out, right? You could only execute JavaScript on your browser. So which means you always have to link your JavaScript to an HTML project, and then that HTML project you'd open, like, let's say you open the HTML file on your browser, and then when you open it on your browser, um you probably check your console, or when the script executes, then that's when you'd be able to see the changes that that script has made. Right. And then that was very, very limiting to um to JavaScript as a language, because if it's not on the browser, you cannot execute it. So they brought out Node.js, right? Node.js came out. And what is Node.js? Node.js is just simply a runtime environment for JavaScript. Node.js is not a language. Or I see that misconception. Uh, we need a backend developer. It will now be like language, Node.js. No. Node.js is the runtime environment. JavaScript is the language. Python is a programming language, and also Python is also the name of the IDE, or the name of the runtime environment, right? That executes the language. But on JavaScript, Node.js is the name of the runtime. So what is even a runtime environment, right? A runtime environment is an environment where you can execute um a, pa- a particular um set of code for that environment, right? So you cannot use Node.js to execute Python code. You use Python's own uh um runtime environment to execute it. The same thing with Node.js. You use Node.js runtime environment to execute JavaScript. Right. So then basic Node.js and npm commands. So I think already start um we should start writing code already, right? We should start writing code. So I, I will reshare my screen. I'll reshare my screen, and then we would actually do one or two things there. Just give me a little time. I'm going to reshare my screen. Um, so I hope the class is actually going well. I hope you guys have learned something, right? Up until this point. I hope you guys have learned something. Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. Wow. Ogochukwu, the omo is for what we are doing is it something you can relate it with, or it's difficult for you to follow up? Because this what you're saying, this or your omo is looking somehow. Anyways, what I'm doing is I'm trying to just set up an environment that we can use to test or to do some few tests. Yes, Martins, definitely what we are doing will sink into your head ASAP as we are going. It will sink in. Okay, right. So let me reshare my screen. Let's start. Let's write something already. Um, okay, cool. We are here. Visual Studio Code. Um, so I remember I told you guys to install Visual Studio Code. How many of you installed it? Now I want to show you how JavaScript we used to use JavaScript before Node.js came out. So of course, for the front-end developers, you already know HTML. And then if you want to execute a script in Java, a JavaScript statement, for example, you're going to do this. You do the script tag here, then you'd say maybe console.log, console. Then you'd say console.log. Oh, you guys are not seeing my screen? Oh, okay. Uh, uh, okay. I'm sharing it. Um, I'm trying to share. Okay, I'm working on that. I'm working on that. I'm working on that. Let's see. Okay, so I've stopped sharing and I want to start sharing the other screen. You guys can see, right? All right. I'm happy you guys can see my screen. So, I think it's big enough for you guys to see, right? Hope it's big enough. Okay, cool. So you'd say, hello world on a normal, then you would using VS Code, and then you have this extension, live server. Yeah, live server extension. Once you have this live server extension, this go live button would always appear here at the bottom. So this is how it used to happen before, where if you want to execute JavaScript. So what I've written here is just a simple script that logs out hello world, finish. Console.log hello world, right? And this is an HTML file. If you see, it's index.html. For people that did not know how I generated this is what I did. I just wrote HTML. Then, of course, HTML5 is the version of HTML we are using. So you just click it to generate the script for you, right? To generate this script, and then uh, console.log. So of course we know that these are tags, JavaScript syntax. So anything we write in between these two scripts is going to go live, and then I'm going to share my browser to you. Once we do that, my browser opens up and I'm going to share my browser with you. Okay. Mm, so I think I need to stop sharing and share again. You're seeing my full screen instead. Mm, okay, anyways, let me just share that. Doesn't mean. Okay, so this is the screen itself. This is my whole screen, but of HTML. But now, if I if I uh, right click and go to inspect, I click on inspect, and let me expand this a bit. Or on the inspect, if I go to console, right? Let me refresh this browser. You see hello world, right? Don't worry about this. This because of a wallet, MetaMask wallet, right? We have hello world file there to line 11, right? Okay, so we are back here. You see that line 11. This was the way, this is also valid. You can still use this if you're um, writing pure HTML, CSS, and just be using a framework like React or Vue or Angular. You notice that your script has to, in a way, be linked to HTML. If this is like uh, with Node.js, you don't to write your script in your HTML file or link it to your HTML file, right? So let's come here and let's console.log hello world. Hello world. Then what's the next thing we are supposed to do? The next thing we are supposed to do is to click on terminal, then we click on new terminal. Once we click on new So for some of you, or for most of you, you're not using a Linux operating system, a Linux-based operating system, right? Sorry, an operating system or a distribution of Linux. Right. So I use pop I, I, I know most of you must have heard of Ubuntu, right? Has anybody heard about Ubuntu, heard that operating system named Ubuntu, right? Anybody? Anybody heard of the operating system named Ubuntu? Anybody? Okay, cool. So how about now? Am I am I clear? Is my Can you guys hear me well now?
Yes, we can now.
You're barely hearing me. Okay. Um, let's try and wrap up. Okay, so um we've written this, we've written that, sorry for the bad network. We've written that and then script.js. How do we do that? Now we already have NodeJS installed. I know NodeJS is installed already. Okay. Isaac Emmanuel, sorry about that. He said most of the times you're breaking. Sorry about that. I'll work on my network. Right. So you write hello dot that you have Node.js on your PC. And how do you do that? You write node dash, it shows you, if it shows you an error, then know that you don't have Node.js. I need to install it. Once it shows v something dot something dot something, right? Or you write node dash v, right? Once you do that and it shows you a version number, then you know that um you have node installed. So this is one node command or one command line command you should know to your node version. This is how you do it. Then another one is clear. So if you have a lot of things showing on your terminal, you want to clear it, you just use clear. And it will clear. For Windows users, CLS. You write CLS and press enter, not clear. To execute this hello world, name of that node file, or the name of that JavaScript file, that's going to be script.js. Then I press enter. So instantly you see the results of my command, right? You see the results very simply. and you can use this to have fun. Hello world, how are you? Hello world, how are you? So first you clear. You can try this out. Another command, um, another command that can help you. Actually, it's not really a command because you're not typing it. Anytime you want to see the previous executed, just press your up arrow button. So if I keep pressing it, you'll see them. And now I'm pressing down arrow button, down, down, down to where I want to execute. So if I want to execute, I need to press up. If I press up again, I'll see no script. If I press down, I see clear. And if I press down again, right, I get there. Is there any question? You guys have any question? I hope you guys are following. Everybody's following, right? Download it actually. When you TS version and you see latest version, right? This version and latest version. LTS version is going to stable version. LTS means long-term support. So when you're going to when you're going to that download your notes long-term support, which means that version you're trying to download is going to be maintained over a long period of time. Okay, yeah, you can use the old version, but we can actually work it, right? We would work it one of these days. So those are like few. So anytime you want to run your node command, or you want to run your script, you just use that command to run it. Is there any question? Does anybody have any question based on what I have done so far? Any question? Okay. Since there is no question, then there are just two things that are left for me to do: JavaScript variables and constants, and then conditional statements. And I'm just going to do the introduction to both of them. Right. So now there's something I want to clear. Is a value. Is a value in double quotes, right? How are you? A value. Also, how are you is a value that's passed to console.log. Now, what is a variable? A variable is hold a value, right? So I can say I can write let greeting equals to that. Sorry. Let greeting equals to that. And here and say console.log greeting. Right. Now, hello is the value, and hello has been assigned to the variable called greeting. So anywhere I call greeting, hello world is what would be replaced or would be served right? Anytime I call greeting, hello world will be set. So the value for the variable greeting. So if I do that and I come here and say node script, node scripts.js. Sorry, I pressed my tab button. Completes your what you're doing. So node scripts.js, it shows hello world. Right. Another command that can help you out is if you have run a couple of commands and then you want to see the history of the commands you've executed, you can just you can write the code. You guys will see a lot of my history. I'll just all my history, all the history of the code I've been running, code of the commands I've been running. So code shutdown, run the run starts, all the commands. So I can actually copy one here. And if you want to copy, you press Control Shift C, then to paste, Control Shift and V. Then I press enter. Right? That's how it's being done, basically. So now, what's the difference between a variable and a constant? Is simple, actually, and change. For example, after console.login greetings, I could decide that greeting should not be equals to how are you. And then after doing that, I now console greeting again. So after doing that, I'd come here, I'd say clear. If you want to clear, after clearing, you say node script.js. And then you execute it. Now see what happens. Hope everyone can see my screen. Okay, cool. Okay, now the reason we can reassign this variable from hello world to how are you is because we are using let. So let allows for reassigning, right? So reassigning is saying, oh, instead of it being this having or holding this value, it can be another value. But if we changed this from let to const, there will be an issue. So let's try to run this script. Right. We're having issue. Now, let's try to read this. Now, this is another thing about programming. Learn to understand the error that you're seeing. It's not when you see error, you don't be like, it has happened again. My village people have reached where I am now. No, try to look through the error, read it, and try to understand what is going on there. Now, this error, what is it saying? It's saying, hello world. It first it has executed line 1. It has executed line 3. Now, coming to line 5, that is where it starts having issue. It now says greetings equals to how are you. It now points at the equal to symbol. Then it now tells you type error, assignment to constant variable. This assignment to constant variable means this greetings is a constant. Why are you using equals to and you're using greetings? Like, why are you trying to reassign the value of greetings from being hello world to being how are you? Why? Right? And see, it even goes as far as telling you that this is the line of code. in your script.js line 5, that if you count that's one, if you count 5 steps to the 10 steps to the right, that's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. On your 10th step, that is an equal to, that this is the problem, this equal to is the issue, right? So line 5, 10 steps from this place, that's where you find your issue. Why is it that you're using an equal to there? So which means you can't reassign a variable that is declared with, or you can't reassign a constant, right? Right, a constant is just a special kind of should I say special kind of carton, because I can't call it a variable, because a variable can change, right? But if you say you're saying a constant, right? A constant is something that will not change. For example, God, he never changes, right? So that's how constants work. Constants and then variables. Does anybody have any question on both what I've just explained? What's constant, what's variable, what's their difference? Any question? No question. Cool. Right. Then let's go into let's go into um let's go into variable types or data types, right? And I'll just pick two today, but I'm going to the introduction to the whole two. Right. So this, what we did here. So hello in this place, hello is a string. Hello world. Hello world is of the type of string. How do we know it's a string? A string is any set of character that is enclosed in a single or double quote. So you can see hello world and how are you are actually strings because they are enclosed in double quotes. And even if you enclose them in single quotes, they are still strings. Even if they are in single quotes like this, they are still strings, right? Then something like this. Let's say const a equals to 20, for example. This is so 20 itself is a number. So in JavaScript, you have numbers. Not like other languages, you have int, float, double, and the rest. You have number in JavaScript. Right. So a number is not enclosed in double quotes, right? And of course, it's a number, it's digits you're using there. If I removed the quotes here, then there will be it will underline it because it doesn't understand what you're trying to do. Is this actually a variable? Is your compiler is thinking, or the language is thinking, is this a variable, or what is it? It's not enclosed in quotes. So you have to enclose it in quotes to make VS Code and also your runtime environment, when you're executing this code, to understand that that is a string and also this is a number, because this one doesn't have single or double quotes and it's digits basically. Now, for people that are also new, right? For people that are new, look at this, what I did here, right? I put 2 /, right? And of course, if I execute this program, you won't see this anything after this 2 /. You won't see this being printed anywhere. You won't see this being printed anywhere. Even if I do something like this, right? Even if I cut that and pasted here, right? Let me just remove this. Let me remove that. And let me run the code. Only hello world gets printed, which is these greetings we are printing. This gets assigned, right? This a equals to 20 gets assigned as a constant, but since we are not printing it, it's just assigned there. It's not being used. But you see that this line of code is not being printed. Now, this double / is used to write a single line comment. So what is a comment, right? A comment is just simply a set of characters that your compiler will execute at runtime. That's a very simple definition of a comment. So this is a comment. Since they are two forward slash, whatever comes after that double forward slash is going to be ignored. It's not going to be executed by your runtime environment. The same thing with here. Now, if you want to, of course, if you want to have like multi-line comments, you can decide to do this like this. You can decide to comment each line, right? You can write what you want to write here, write what you want to write here, write what you want to write here. But what if you want to what if you want to comment this multi-line, but you don't want to you don't want to do it line by line. You don't want to add comments line by line. You want to maybe start a comment, write what you want to write in full, and then end the comment somewhere. So that's when you would do something like this. So note this double slash is used for single line comments. Now, multi-line comments is like this. You have a forward slash, you have an asterisk symbol, that's to open or to start the comment. Then I have asterisk symbol and forward slash to end it. Now, whatever you put in between this asterisk, the asterisk, it's going to be regarded as a comment. For example, I can decide to type a whole lot of things here, press enter, type again, as much as I want to type, right? And what's the real use of comments? What are the few uses of comments? Number one, comments is used for debugging, right? So let's take, for example, this that line of code. Let's say I wrote this thing and I wrote greeting equals to hi, for example, right? And then I come here and clear, and then I run it. We see that, of course, it points to line 5, right? It points to line 5. I can come to line 5 and comment, just add that double slash, double forward slash there. Then I come back to execute the code and it runs well, right? For people using VS Code, the shortcut to comment a line of code is control and forward slash. To toggle comments, control forward slash to either add the comment or to remove it. So that's control plus forward slash. Right. I hope you guys have learned that. Okay. So we have a string um data type and a number data type. Of course, the data type is just simply a way of presenting value, right? Or it's a rule to follow, right? A data type is just a rule you're supposed to follow to present data to your runtime environment. So your runtime environment will understand that, okay, since this thing follows the rule of having two double quotes is a string. Okay, if it doesn't have double quote and it's just digits, is a number. It understands it better. Now, per each of these data types, there are what is called properties of those data types. For example, let me remove this. Okay, sorry, I skipped something. Apart from using comments to debug, comments can be used to give hints about what is going on, right? Uh, for example, I could say this line of code assigns hello world to greetings variable. greetings variable. I could do that, right? I could make this show up there. Of course, now what are the properties and methods or functions I can call on this variable named this greetings variable that holds the value of hello world? For example, if I want to know the total number of characters in this string, I can write greetings.length. Greetings.length, let me clear this. What did I do? It's supposed to be script.js. Right. Length is going to tell you the total number of characters that are enclosed in this double quote, right? Or in this string, right? You can also do this if you want to check the literal length. You can say maybe something like, for example, hello. You can say hello.length like this, and if you execute it to still give you the correct answer. I hope you guys can hear me. I hope you guys can hear me. What's the difference between an error and a bug, please? Okay, so what's the main difference, right? Error, bug. Error and bug, right? I don't really think there's a difference between both of them, right? So you solve an error, you debug a bug, right? So once your code doesn't execute well, right, and it throws back an error message, an error has occurred, that error can also be, you can also call it a bug, right? I don't I don't think there is a difference between both, right? I don't really think so. But some people might say bug and error is different, sha, but no, I don't think it's different. Because you're the one that will introduce an error to your code, which can also be called a bug. You can introduce a bug to your code, you can introduce an error to your code. So I don't think there's a difference between both of them. Uh, God's will. I hope I've answered your question. Uh, Jason, well, so you're not actually running a server currently. You're not running a server. You're just executing a script, right? You're just executing a file. So what happens is once it's finished executing the file, the runtime environment exits that execution and then it ends. So after going through all these lines of code and there's no line of code again, it exits, right? We've not started running a server. It's when you're writing back end or front end that you need to like spin up a server, run a server, so that as you're doing it, the changes would reflect, right? Most times. So that is one. Okay. Um, yeah, so every time you make a change to your scripts.js and you want to see what's the result of that change, right? You can always execute it here. Yeah, every time you have to come back and execute it here, right? Um, any other question? All right. So, another one. Mm, so we can also try Okay, someone is asking why do we use const? We can use let here actually, but the reason I'm using const is I don't think I would be changing the uh the value of greetings from hello world to something else. That's the reason I'm using const. If I know that in the future I will change the value, right? Then I'll do that. Okay, someone is also asking what's the difference between var and let. So first of all, let is more modern, right? And then var is was the first way to um assign variables in JavaScript, right? And then var allows you to reassign and to redeclare, but let doesn't allow you to redeclare. For example, this is what I mean. If you're using let and you say let greetings be equals to hello world, the only thing you can do is you can reassign. You can say greetings should be equals to something else, anything else, and it will work. But you can't say again that let greetings be equals to. You can't use let again. This is called, what you're trying to do here is you're trying to redeclare um greetings, right? You're trying to redeclare and reassign at the same time, right? This is not allowed when you're using let. But if you're using var, for example, when you say var, it will accept it. var will not train. In fact, let me run the code. Let me run this code. Uh, var doesn't throw any error, right? Then, um, then another key difference is that var is blocked scope, while let is function scoped. Yeah. Yes. var is blocked scope while let is function scoped. That's another key difference. Right. Then, okay. I hope I've answered your question, Kingsley. Have I answered your question? Okay. So on to the next question. How can I access terminal on VS Code? Okay. Now terminal exists for Linux. What you have on Windows is command line. So if you're using Windows, then you don't have terminal actually, you have command line, right? Then if you want to have terminal, right? Have a terminal like interface on your Windows VS Code, for example. Then you need to download Git for Windows. I remember I dropped the link Git for Windows on your on the Discord, and I think it's pinned, right? So when you go there, you download Git for Windows, you install it, and after installing it, when you come to your terminal, so this is how you spin up your terminal. You come here, you click terminal, you click new terminal. So once you click new terminal, this the terminal will come up, but it might come up as CLI command line first, but then you should be able to change it. You'd be able to change it. So if you click on this drop down, right, you see the different types. Is it JavaScript debug? You'd see bash. Yeah, you see git bash as an option, right? You see git bash as one of the options when you after installing Git for Windows, you should see git bash there, and then you should be able to choose git bash, and then you'll be able to run the same commands that I'm running. But if you don't have Git for Windows, you won't be able to run this same command that I'm running. Do you get? I hope I have answered your question, Savior. Okay, yeah, Savior, console.log is an output statement. Console.log is used to print out the value of its argument. So the argument here is greetings. Greeting is passed as an argument to console.log. So anywhere you call console.log, it will understand that you want to log out something on the console. That's you want to print out something on the console. So yes, that's what console.log is used. Okay. Block scope, function scope. I would explain this in more detail when we start writing functions. So basically, a block is just a set of statements that are enclosed in curly brace. So once there's curly brace, right? You have a block, right? Then of course function scope is scoped to that particular function. So if you have like nested functions, right? Then and then you have variables. Let's say now if you have let and then you have an if statement, an if statement has curly braces, right? And then inside that if statement, if you're declaring a variable, then if you're declaring a variable with var, that variable can also be accessed outside. But then if you're using let, the let won't allow any variable outside that if block. Or sorry, it won't be accessible outside the if block. Don't worry, once we get into writing functions, we'll go into this block scope and function scope, and then I'll give you a clear example of how it works with var and let. Yeah, so that would be something that we'll do much later. Okay, so is there any other question? Is there any other question? Anybody has any other question? Okay, so greeting. So greeting dot now there's something I need to tell you guys about your variables, your string variables to be precise. Each of these characters here has um has an index. For example, the character H has the index of 0 or is at the index of 0 in this string, right? E has the index of 1. Now, if I want to print out the value H, I could just do greetings at the index of 0. Then if I come here, clear, and then node script.js, you see that H is being printed. Okay, yes. So Kingsley is asking, are there conventions in terms of naming variables? Yes, there are conventions in naming variables, and I would come to that. So you see, so that's one. If I write 2 there, then that would be okay. So that's 2. If I wrote 1, then that would be E. That would be E, right? So variables kind of tend to behave like arrays, actually, right? Sorry, string variables tend to behave like arrays, right? But they are strings. So the same way you access individual elements in an array, you can access individual characters in a string. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the naming conventions of variables. Now, there are what is called reserved words in JavaScript. In fact, in every programming language, there are what is called reserved words. Now, what are reserved words? Reserved words, reserved words, reserved words are simply characters or words that you can't name your variable. For example, I can't name my variable function. Nah, I can't name it function, right? So it said, what is it saying? Function is not allowed as a what? A variable declaration name. I can't name it let. I can't name If I try to execute this, it throws an error. Okay, it says greetings. Greetings is not defined because you're saying var and let. So where is the name? Where is greetings as a name? You can't name your variables using those names, right? Names that your program uses, right? You can't name you can't name your variable continue, for example. Those are words that are reserved for particular commands. Do you get? Then also, you can't name your variable starting with a digit or with a special character. Like I can't start my variable with 8 with any digit, 12. I can't start it with, but it can be included. Greets 7, ing, or greet 7. This would work. I greet 7 times 7x. Greet 7x would work. Yeah, it still works if I remove this. Perfectly well. Greet 7x. You can't start your variable with you can't start it with a hyphen. You can't start it with an at, but you can start it with an underscore. So I could say underscore greet, and it works. It can also be you can also have underscores in between too, and it will work perfectly well, right? So these are like few things you need to note. You can have hyphens in between too. So just note that you're not supposed to use special characters. You can use a dollar symbol. You can have a dollar symbol. You can use dollar symbols to name your variables. I think this is most common in PHP, right? JavaScript also allows you to use symbols to name dollar symbol to start or be included in between your variables. So I could put a dollar symbol here and it will still work. So that's one thing to know. You can use underscore or dollar symbol to start your variable or in between your variable. You can use digits in between your variables alone. You cannot use digits to start your variables. You can use it in between and at the end. You can use digits, right? Then another thing that we will need to talk about is um um your how do you call it? Name casing, right? That's what is being called. How you write your variable names. Now, there are different styles to writing variable names, and there are three that are very, very popular. First, the first one, um, how you would want to write your variable name. Variable naming, I'll call this variable naming. So we've left reserve words. Variable naming. Variable name case. So the first one is you have KodeCamp case. Now, for people that have written HTML, CSS, and you've really worked with CSS, CSS mainly uses KodeCamp style of name casing, right? This name. So what you have, for example, you remember with something like font size, you do font, then hyphen size, right? Font size, then you now say equals to. So this font size, the fact that you're separating um words using a hyphen or this dash here, right? This is a KodeCamp style of naming your variables. So that's it. Background color. When you say background color, the same thing. For people that are not following, just know that KodeCamp case, when you're using a KodeCamp case, you separate your characters using hyphen, short and simple. And JavaScript doesn't use this, not supported by JavaScript. Not supported by JavaScript. Then the next one is snake casing. For people that have written Python, right? For example, what I just wrote here, greet. I could say greet underscore me. Of course, this is snake casing. Right, snake casing, and this is used mainly in Python programming language for people that have used Python very well. There, you always write your variable names like this. The functions in Python are written like this, right? So that's name casing, snake casing. This is supported by JavaScript. But it's not a standard actually in JavaScript. What JavaScript supports is what is called camel casing. So camel casing is supported and recommended. So if you see something like let's say I want to write greet me and I write greet me, for example, right? Greet me, then I write greet me here. Greet me, this is camel casing because the first word is in small letters, but then the initials of the other words that follow it are going to be in small letters. So the me noun is in the initial, that's the first letter of me is in capital, then the rest will be in small letter. So that's basically like the names, the name casing you'd want to use. But then don't use this to actually use camel case. When you're writing Python, use snake case. There's Pascal case I didn't talk about. Sorry, I just remembered it. So there's Pascal case. Pascal case casing. So in Pascal case is similar to camel case, but in Pascal case, the initial of every word in your variable is going to be in capital letter. So for example, when you write greet me, you write greet me with capital G, right? Greet me, greet me. Now, this is used in C# from my experience. C#, their variables and their functions mainly use this, right? Mainly use Pascal casing. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about variables. We'll still come back to variables in our next class because I don't want this class to be too stretched. So what I'm going to talk about next, and which is the last thing I'm going to talk about, is going to be conditions. So sometimes you want something to be true. Like for example, you can say let's a equals to let a equals to 20, for example. Simple thing. Let a equals to 20. You say if a is less than 20, then you could log out or console.log. But then if it is greater than, if it's greater than 20, you can say so let's take for example, let's say this is 18, right? And I execute that line of code. Let me clear first. Let me clear it, then I come back here and say node scripts. A is greater than 20, right? And sorry, sorry. What I'm checking is is it true that A is less than 18, right? So if A is less than 18, sorry. So if this is true, that A is less than 18, then we would say A is less than or A is less than 18. Sorry. Sorry. So let me clear this. Sorry if I got anybody confused. Sorry about that. Okay. So if we said A is equals to 20, let's use let here. We say A is equals to 20. We now say is A less than 18? So what we are saying now is 20 less than 18? No, but 20 is greater than 18. So since 20 is since 20 is greater than 18, this will execute to a false. So because we are checking, remember that we are checking if 18, or sorry, if 20 is less than 18, but 20 is greater than 18, right? So sorry. So if we execute that now, sorry, if I confused anybody, sorry. So since 20 is greater than 18, this is going to resolve to false, right? And since this resolves to false, then this is what is going to be printed. The else part is what is going to be printed. But if we said is 20 greater than 18, that is A greater than 18, of course 20 is greater than 18. Wait, sorry, 20 is greater than 18, then we are supposed to say 20 is greater than here. 20 is greater than 18. Then here is supposed to be 20 is less than 18. Sorry, let me execute this again. Right. So 20 is greater than 18. So because this is true, I hope you guys are following. Is there anybody that is confused at this point? Is anybody confused? Sorry if I confused anybody. 20 is greater than 18, right? This symbol is greater than. So A is greater than 18 and A is 20. And this is true. This statement we just made here is true. It's true that 20 is greater than 18. So of course, we should print that A is greater than 18, right? Sorry. So A is greater than 18. But what if this was false? What if this was false? Like saying is 20 less than 18? That's false. If 20 is less than 18, that's false, right? So if 20 is less than 18, 20 less than 18 is saying, yeah, this is supposed to print. Oh, this is looking quite confusing to me at this point. Okay, so let's look at it more. Let's look at it more. 20 is less than 18. No. So this is false actually. This is false, right? So what we are supposed to say is, so either ways, 20 is greater than 18. So if this is true, 20 is greater than 18, or what I'm supposed to say here is, it's still the same thing. Or 18, it 18, A is less than 18, okay? So I'm supposed to say A is less than, okay, wait, sorry. I think I understand where I'm confused. So if we did something like this, is A greater than 6? So 20 is greater than 6, right? Let me make this easier. Okay, cool. So A is greater than 6. That's true. A is greater than 6. So 20 is greater than 6. But let's try 25. So A is less, or sorry, instead of using, let's use 25 here. Sorry. So 25 is greater than, so 20 is greater than 25. Come on, wait. So let's do it this way. I think this would make it easier. So since this is false, right? Since this is false, the else is the one that is supposed to be executed. But I want to be getting truths first. A is greater than, so this executes to false, basically. Basically, this executes to false because 20 is not greater than 25. That's why it's trying to execute the else. But if this is true, like if what we are trying to do here is true, like for example, we say, is 20 less than 25? Is 20 less than 25? Yes, 20 is less than 25. So we could say A is less than. So instead of putting A here, I could say A and then plus there. A is less than that, and then 20 is less than 25, correct? So then, so the simple thing is just what I'm trying to explain is that the if block of code is only going to execute if and only if what you are trying to check here is true. If what you're trying to compare, what you're trying to check here resolves to false, then the else statement, which is something like this, and then you can write your statement inside, but the else statement will only execute, this block of code inside here will only execute when this becomes false, right? But as far as this executes to become true, then this, whatever I have in the if block of code is what is going to be executed. Does that make any sense to you guys? Or is there anybody that's confused already? Very confused. Okay. Yeah. So just know, so for example, so in this example, we know that 20, okay. Yeah, Savior Nicholas, yes, I'm using plus for concatenation. So concatenation is just adding two strings. For people that don't know what concatenation means, concatenation is adding two strings. If you're adding, if you're using numbers, then that will be addition. But since it's two strings, it's concatenation. Okay, Chidima Rosemary, right? So this is what I'll do. Um, let me console.log a true here, and then let me console.log a false here to make it easier for you guys to get. So this true here actually logs out because what we are trying to compare here is true, right? This is more like saying, are you logged in? If true that you're logged in, okay, do this thing. If you're not logged in, do this thing. Just that's why it's called a conditional statement. You know, it's conditional. So they are like two branches for this execution to go through. It's either it goes through this branch that's executing that block, or it executes this other block. It won't. So there's no time that these two blocks will be executed at the same time. There's no program that you have if and else, and then the if and else executes the same time, right? The condition for executing any of them will lie in this place, right? This is where you write your expression, right? So you say if an expression, you say if an expression or a comparison here, if so this expression or comparison you're trying to do, whatever you want to write inside there, has to return a true or false. In fact, let's start it like this. One greater than two. Is one greater than two? One greater than two. It's true now, right? Let's execute that line of code. Let me clear first. Let's execute it. Oh, sorry. Is one greater than two? False, right? What we are saying here is, we are checking if one is greater than two, which is not true. One is less than two. That's why this executes to become a false, right? Now, true or false is actually another data type called the Boolean data type. Boolean. Let me write it here. So we have this tree, right? String number. I've not even touched strings and numbers yet. Like, I'm just doing an intro, right? We are going to actually go into it deeply. So Boolean, a Boolean is just simply a true or a false, short and simple. Shikina. True, false. That's it. But it will not just output true or output false. You generate a Boolean when you're trying to compare two things. Like, for example, you can say is 1 equals to 1, or is 1 equals to 2. This is false actually. It's false because 1 is not 2. But you can say, is it true that 2 and 2 are equal? That will give you a true because 2 and 2 are actually equal, right? So when you're comparing two values, you can compare string. You can say is high the same thing as high. That's going to be a true. That's going to be a true. Is high equals to high? True. But is high equals to high with capital H? Let's check. That's a false, right? So you see that when we compare two things, when we compare two values, right? Maybe a string and a string, or a number and a number, using certain symbols like greater than, equals to, not equals to, and the rest, it generates a boolean, which is either a true or a false. Now, with that generation of boolean, with that that's with generating that boolean statement, you can use that to decide on what action to take next. Does it make sense? You can use that to decide what the action you take first. So you can say if high is equals to high. So now the way if works is that whatever you're trying to compare here, if it resolves to a true, if what you're comparing here returns a true to if, then this line of code here, whatever line of code you write here is going to execute. But then if what you're trying to compare here is false, right? Then whatever I write in your else statement will be what will be executed. And mind you, it's not compulsory to have an else statement. You can write an if statement without an else statement. It's allowed, but you cannot write an else statement on its own. You can, this is valid actually. I can write an if statement without an else statement, but you cannot write an else statement just like that. Okay. So, do you guys have any question? Who has question? Who has question? Ask now. So someone is asking, is it still okay to close the opening brace for the if statement block at the end of the else statement block? Statement block at the end of the else statement block. I'm still thinking what you mean. So are you trying to say something like this, have an else like this? Is this what you mean, Savior Nicholas? Is this what you're referring to? No, this is not accepted. This is not allowed. You can't have an else inside an if. No, it has to be outside here. It has to be outside. It cannot be inside. It has to be like this. If at all you're going to have an else statement, it's going to be like this. Right? So, is there any other question? Is there any other person that has a question to ask based on what we've done today? Okay. All right. So, in the absence of, okay, how do you reference a variable in console.log? I did it here. Let's a equals to 5 or 5. Console.log a. So I'm referencing the variable a here, and it's printing out 5. Oh, okay. So let's say you say name. There are few ways to do what you're asking me of. Uh, okay. Yeah, Radiance Judge. This is just like an introduction. We are going to um dive into these things more in our next class, right? I'm just trying to brush up on all these things. So, see, if we clear and then we come here and say node scripts, you see that you have my name is Kingsley. My name is Kingsley. My name is plus name. Now, because you're adding my name is, and my name is a string, and then you're adding the variable name here. This plus here is you're not this you call this concatenation, that's adding two strings, using plus in between two strings. The act of using plus in between this string and then a variable that holds a string is called concatenation. Okay, so my name is Kingsley. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is called concatenation. Okay, now with JavaScript is not necessary to have uh so it's not necessary to have semicolons at the end of statements in JavaScript. If I decide to remove all the semicolons here and run this, it's still going to run perfectly well, right? JavaScript is not strict on using of semicolon. So whether you put semicolons after every of your ending statements or you don't put it, you don't attach it to your ending statements, JavaScript is cool with that. JavaScript doesn't enforce it. So it's not mandatory, right? But in other languages like C Sharp, for example, it's mandatory. Well, mandatory. Very, very, it's mandatory. Mandatory. Okay. Any other question? Is there any other question? Any other question? Any other question? All right. So, in the absence of any other question, I would like to thank you all for coming out to today's class. I hope you've learned one or two things and it's not difficult for you, right? This first class is just like kind of, should I say, a brush up, right? We'll still go into strings, we'll go into numbers, we'll go into those things in detail in our subsequent classes, and then you're going to find out even more about them. Then also the if statements, that's conditional statements, the expressions, how you're supposed to write them. Definitely, we are going to go into all those things. So Jessam is asking, will there be a task? Um, I'll answer that in the Discord. I'll answer if there will be a task or not in the Discord. But don't be afraid. Right. So I would announce that on the Discord. Right. Thank you very much for coming out, and I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope you learned something from the class, and yeah. Martins, I hope to see you in the next class. Okay. Thank you. And that'll be all. Oh, Sunny Jonathan, are you there? Sunny Jonathan, can you unmute?
Yes,
Make me,
I hear you.
yeah, you're currently the host, so I would request you make me the host. So
Yes, I've
yeah,
done that.
all right, thank you very much.